Hi, I'm Cam Taylor with the Transitional Leadership Network, and I just want to give an overview of the difference between more of a traditional approach or a interim model versus an intentional interim, which we call the transitional model. And it's my belief that more and more churches today require a more intentional process during their time between pastors. Let's jump in. This ministry was started in 2003 by Outreach Canada. And then at the end of 2019, the ministry was passed over to myself and the team that I had brought together and is now called the Transitional Leadership Network. I am so grateful that we stand on the shoulders of such wonderful people who started this ministry and had the vision for what we're carrying out today. The big idea with what we're talking about and what we teach and our model is that times of transition are windows of opportunity for churches, at times when they can experience transformational turning points, where greater health and greater attention to the mission can be given and can be made. Ephesians 5:27, really it's the heart of Jesus to present her as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. We love the church and we want to see her a radiant church, and times of transition can help that to happen. The big objective during a time of transition is to welcome at the end of it a brand new senior pastor into a healthy, functioning, spiritually renewed church community. Now, what transitional ministry is not, if you want to be able to accomplish that objective, it's not just holding the fort mentality, where you just offer pulpit supply and you hold the fort or carry out the ministry until the next pastor is found. It's not where someone simply fills in until the real pastor arrives. It is a real season where real ministry happens, the transition can be. It's not a rush process that avoids evaluation and the deeper renovations that might be required. Here's just a snapshot of more of a traditional approach, or just the basic interim model, where you have outside input and there is an exit of a pastor, and then typically they go into some closure, farewell perhaps, but then very quickly they put together a search team and start the search to find that next pastor. And very little time and attention is given to some of the deeper aspects that really should be attended to during the transition. And then eventually that new pastor does come into that church. Well, the new paradigm goes something like this. It is definitely seen as a season of renewal. It's a time of meaningful change, and where changes can potentially start to be made that can be followed through with under the ministry of that new lead pastor. It's a partnership between the church and trained transitional specialists who have competency and skills to help that church in that transition. And it's also, this new paradigm is where the pastoral search is done from a posture of health, not as a reaction maybe to the ministry they had, but it's attended to once greater clarity as to where they're going is achieved. And it's a listening process, listening to what God is saying and what God is doing and what God is up to, and to be able to make some adjustments based on what you're hearing. John 10:4, his sheep follow him because they know his voice. And isn't that our desire for our churches, for our leadership, for our people, is that we will learn to hear God's voice and follow him in that path as we live out his mission in the world. Well, let me talk in more detail about this transitional model, or this intentional interim. There are 8 goals that we talk about that all interrelate to some degree. There is an order to them for sure, but they go like this. It's facilitating closure is such a huge part of an intentional transitional process, where it's done thoroughly and deeply and in a way that really helps that congregation to grieve the loss of their pastor and maybe what was and what they had, and to be able to get ready to move forward into a new life together as a congregation. There's facilitating pastoral services or congregational care is facilitated in very intentional ways. There's the organization of the ministry, this short-term administration that has to go on. The ministry must go on. It's like the plane is flying while you're working on it. So there has to be a balance and a connection between the two. The intentional transitional model approaches preaching and communication with intentionality, where the sermons are very much geared to where that church is at in its transition. Then there's a facilitation of the spiritual and relationship renewal, ensuring that there's a healthy connection with God, that upward dimension of our relationship. The connections with one another in the body, that they're healthy and there's love and warmth within that body so that that becomes an attractive community. And then also there's attention given to that outward extension of our relationships to our community. And then as those elements are processed and attended to, then vision clarity is something that is facilitated. And oftentimes it's not necessarily a complete visioning process, but it's enough work where that congregation is able to discern where is God taking us so that you can actually then find a leader to guide you in that direction. Facilitating organizational health really goes hand in hand with vision clarity. You want to make sure that you're organized so that you're able to move forward with the vision and the mission God has given for you. And then when the time is right, the search process is facilitated so the proper lead pastor can be found for that congregation. And here's just a visual for this. It's just a little more complex. There's more elements compared to the traditional diagram. And all these circles sort of interrelate the closure piece and these other pastoral care and administration, preaching, relationship renewal, vision clarity, organizational health. They're moving parts within the whole of that community that the transitional leader, the coach, the pastor is able to oversee and help guide the congregation to that place of a healthy search where they find the right pastor and able to move forward, and done in an atmosphere of both assessment and ongoing prayer as the foundation to that ministry. Great phrase by Benjamin Franklin. Out of adversity comes opportunity. And I think this is a foundational element of taking the time and sometimes the trouble to be patient with yourself, to go into this in-between time of transition, to work on yourself so that you're ready for that new place where God is taking you to. What are some of the benefits? Like, why bother taking the time and taking a little more time for an intentional transitional process? Well, for starters, it does create an atmosphere where renewal and healthy change can actually occur. And in this day and age, adaptive change is definitely more the norm than technical change. That there needs to be a change in thinking and a change in behavior and deeper change. So transition creates that atmosphere where that can happen. Another benefit is it does give the congregation quality and skilled coaching and leadership support. The intentional transition, similar to a traditional approach, does lower anxiety, but more than that, it creates a pathway to move into the future, which really is what true hope is all about. Another benefit is that there's a focus on overall church health, not just the pastoral search and getting that next leader. So it's more of a natural process that deals with the whole body, not just that leadership aspect of the body. A couple more benefits. There's the creation of clear goals in a united vision that's a co-created experience between the transitional pastor and the leadership. So it's not somebody coming in and telling you what you're going to do. It's the co-creation of this. Great benefit, creates greater collaboration and greater teamwork. And it also allows the church to reset by addressing areas which may be off track, unhealthy, out of alignment with God's vision and God's direction for that church. It's a together process because together we're really committed to hearing God's voice and responding to Him in a way that will bring glory and really ultimate honor to Him. The leadership team, just a few features of this particular model. The leadership team comes to understand the differences between just an interim or traditional approach and this transitional model and the different roles. There's an agreement that's signed between and understood between the transitional pastor and the congregation and the leadership. It's knowing how to function inside of its constitution, bylaws, policies, and procedures are also a part of this organizational health that goes on, so that that church is able to do a thorough assessment and make some changes that encompass the whole ministry. There's high value on the denominational cooperation, or the ministry, the sponsoring body that's supporting that church, and relationship renewal as it's needed. The search process is put on hold until an agreed upon these health indicators are met, so that only then can the search actually go forward. Now, it may include a ministry assessment. It will include some form of assessment that's customized for that situation. Usually, how long will this last? Some people ask, well, 6 to 18 months. And I would say more on the 12 to 18 months is more the norm, to 24 months. But it all depends on the situation. There's no cookie cutter approach to this, but there's principles that you can follow. There is always emphasis on creating a strong body health, strong community, clear vision, being united in the focus, and creating a healthier church, and being intentional. The ultimate objective is to hand off a healthier, spiritually renewed church to a new senior leader who has been hired through a positive and a thorough search process, depending on the Holy Spirit's guidance. So there you have it. It's a contrast. You have options during transition. My encouragement is to seriously consider intentional interim ministry because of the deep change, because of what it can actually do for your church, not just in the short term, but in the long term as you consider your kingdom impact in your community. Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out our website, transitionalleadership.org, for more information and more videos. And we are here to resource you and support you in this work of transition.